on the eve of our great nation's 250th birthday. And that's right. And in the midst of this epic and fateful battle that truly will determine the future of our great republic, Charlie Kirk understood that better than anyone. And as you've heard here over the last few days, we're no longer in a battle, no longer in a contrast just between Republicans and Democrats. We're in a contrast between two completely different, diametrically opposed worldviews. Charlie stood for that. I knew him a long time, and yes, Andy Biggs, we're going to work on that statue in the Capitol, okay? Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I knew Charlie a long time. I came up in the conservative movement. For about 20 years before I got to Congress, I served as a constitutional law attorney. And so my job was to go into the courts and defend religious freedom and marriage and family and the sanctity of human life. I came across a lot of people during those years. I don't think, when I was doing the work in the courts and the court of public opinion, I don't think there was anyone else who handled that court of public opinion better than Charlie Kirk, and that's why we love his legacy so much. I was honored to be asked to speak at 4 different vigils and events for him following his tragic passing. It was as if the ground shook beneath all of us, and at each one of those things, we all had a short amount of time, and I just presented a simple message, and I wanted to share it with you here this morning. It's a pretty simple thing. I think the best way to honor Charlie's legacy is to live as he lived. And what I mean by that is I think there's 2 very important things that all of us can and should do. I think we should advance his principles, and I think we should adopt his approach. Now let me talk about the first one, advancing his principles. See, what Charlie stood for was very well known by everybody. He was a man of deep faith and conviction, as we know. He was a man who was truly authentic, and that's what drew everybody into the message. That was the great power of his message, was that it came so deep from his heart. It was authentic. Charlie believed in the things that Scripture says we should focus on, the things that are praiseworthy and noble and good. He believed and he preached faith and family and freedom and virtue and patriotism. See, Charlie understood we live in the greatest nation in the history of the world, and it's not even close, and we all know that. Charlie had a great talent of explaining why we live in the most successful, most benevolent, most free, most powerful nation it's ever been. It's really not even close. And he did that so well, because see, Charlie understood, the reason he was so passionate about that message is he knew that it is easy to take freedom away from a people if they do not understand the source of it. I love that he read Psalm 11:3, not just as a rhetorical question, but as a call to arms. You know that scripture. It says, if the foundations be destroyed, what will the righteous do? It's our call to arms as well. To save our country, all of us have to defend the foundations and advance these truths. So what I wanted to do in just a couple of short minutes here is give you what I think may be a helpful illustration that you can use as well. I've been doing this for the last few years because I'm going into these college auditoriums and sometimes on these large stages, and usually I have a whiteboard. I'll request a whiteboard. And I go through what I just say is a word picture, 5 simple words to explain why we live in the greatest nation in the history of the world. This is important for us to do right now because so few people understand it anymore. So let me offer this illustration to you, and maybe you can use it as well. You don't need a whiteboard. You can do it on a napkin or a small piece of paper. But here's what I do. I go up on the board, and I write 5 words on the board. I go to the top, and I write G-O-D, all big capital letters at the top. I go halfway down the board, and I write king, lowercase k. The bottom of the board, I write the people, / the subjects. And then I draw a bunch of arrows down from the king to the people. I back up, and I look at the whiteboard, and I say, see, this is a graphic illustration, a graphic word picture of what would be defined as the philosophy of the divine right of kings. It's an old European medieval notion that other countries bought into before ours came along. And it explains this basic idea. They believed that there was a God somewhere hovering high in the heavens, but the real boss, the earthly boss, the sovereign, was the king. And the king was the one that could give you all your rights, tell you what property you can hold, sometimes who you can marry, what you may do for a living, etc. The king was the boss. Well, in 1776, a group of faithful patriots came along. Yeah, and they deeply considered this old medieval philosophy, and they said, that's not right. The king is a tyrant. The king has taken away our rights. Now, you might know that many of them were seminarians. They were students of Scripture. They understood the real truth, and they said, this is not what this is all about. G.K. Chesterton was a famous British philosopher, and he said one time, America is the only nation in the world that is founded upon a creed, and it's listed with almost theological lucidity in the Declaration of Independence. What is the creed? We hold these truths to be self-evident. Now, when I'm in a big audience of university students, I'll say, hold on, wait a minute. What is a self-evident truth? Something that's obvious. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Wait a minute. It doesn't say just born equal. It says created equal, okay, by someone. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was such a revolutionary statement at the time. You know why? Because we shattered that old paradigm, that old philosophy. And effectively, I go to the whiteboard, I take the eraser, and I erase the word king off the board. I erase all the arrows that went down from the king to the people and the subjects, and I erase the word the subjects. The only two words left on the board, three words, God and the people. So then I draw all the arrows straight down to the people. And I step back and I say, that, my friends, is the root of our Judeo-Christian heritage. That is the root of the truth that made us the greatest nation in the history of the world. That's it. Many years after the founding, Abraham Lincoln famously summarized it in the Gettysburg Address. He said, we are dedicated to this proposition, that we are one nation under God, and that a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. But then we have to explain the next part. Why did that make us so successful? Because of the implications of that worldview. So you understand the difference between that and what the other nations were pursuing before us. See, what Lincoln was talking about is if we're going to have a self-governing people, we have to have responsibility that goes along with that. The founders understood that you had to have a basic moral consensus to keep a constitutional republic. George Washington was the father of our country. He famously said in his farewell address, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. John Adams came next. He said, our Constitution is made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. The other implication that comes from that is that because we are made by a creator, remember the framers, the founders were students of Scripture, they understood every single person is made in the image of God. And there's big time implications that come from that. You know what it means? Yeah. So the meaning of that is so important because it means every single person has inestimable dignity and value. And your value is not related in any way to the color of your skin, or what zip code you live in, or what your major is in college. Your value is inherent because it is given to you by God, and no one can take that away. No one can take that away. The founders built our country on the premise that our rights do not come from the state, they do not come from the government, they come from God Himself. And that is what has made us the great nation that we are. Now, look, real quick to close the illustration, then I say, when I'm in a university campus, I say, but you know what the problem is? Over the last few generations, we have strayed from these foundational truths. The foundations are being destroyed. I take an eraser, I go back to the board, and I erase G-O-D, because now there's this movement that denies the Creator Himself, denies His commands and His orders and all the things that ordered our liberty in the beginning. And that is the problem, and that is why freedom is imperiled, and that is why we're in a war in this culture to save the greatest nation, this great republic of ours. The best way to restore it is to return and restore those foundations, to return God to the top and to remember who we are beneath Him. Look, Charlie knew those foundational truths, and he evangelized them better than anybody I know, and now we all have to do the same. So the first principle is advance his principles, and the second one is adopt his approach. I just want to say this to state the obvious, and you all know it. I'm delighted to follow the Professor Glenn Beck here this morning. His message was spot on. See, Charlie loved a vigorous debate, but he loved people more. That's the secret, right? He took to heart the biblical admonitions. Among them are a few. 1 Peter 3:15, always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that you have. I love 2 Timothy 2, and Charlie did as well. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. Charlie also loved 1 Corinthians 16, verse 13. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, but let all that you do be done in love. And as radical and as powerful as it is, Jesus reminded us you're supposed to love even your enemies. Now, that's our calling. Charlie was never motivated by hate for anyone. That's why he was such a great example. That's why his legacy lives on as it is, because he was driven by that powerful truth. After every debate, he was always the very first person to reach out a hand of friendship to someone, or offer an arm around the shoulder of someone who he felt was lost. Because in so many places, in so many cases, the person on the other side of the table actually was lost in a very real sense, not just philosophically, but spiritually. And it was about this eternal battles. Charlie, our friend Charlie, served sacrificially to pull people back from the abyss. He didn't do it just to save a country. Even more importantly, he did it to save souls. And that's what we have to remember, especially on this Sunday. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. And your presence here today shows that you're in the category of those who do much. I want to thank you for all your willingness to stand and engage in this battle right now. It's never been more important than it is right now. And I want to thank you all for what you did in last fall's election, returning Donald J. Trump to the White House, yes. And allowing us to keep the majorities in Congress, in the House and Senate. Now, let me tell you something. That's in spite of the media's desperate efforts to paint a different picture. We worked arm in arm with President Trump over the last 12 months, and we have had one of the most consequential, historic Congresses in the history of this country. Let me bring you a couple of these. Yeah. America is looking at a split screen right now, okay? On one side is President Trump and our majorities in Congress delivering on our promises. Look, a short list. We ended the border crisis, right? In very short order. We are working right now to solve the crime crisis in all these major cities around the country. We passed the largest tax cut in U.S. history, and at the same time, the largest spending cut in U.S. history. We are restoring American energy dominance. We are bringing down the cost of living, and we are rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse in this government. We kicked illegal aliens off of taxpayer benefits. I think you'd like that. We slashed funding to USAID, PBS, and NPR. Yes. They were too woke, and you know what we did as well? We kicked biological men out of women's sports, and so much more. In the last 12 months, we've codified more than 70 of President Trump's nation-shaping executive orders, and that's so far. And meanwhile, he's been reforming every agency of the federal government and restoring peace through strength again. We desperately needed all of it. All of that is in the past 12 months. We have so much more to do. And by the way, we did it with the smallest margins in U.S. history. I mean, every day. On the other side of that split screen, in quick summary, you see the radical left Marxist Democrats. And they are being overrun by the Marxists. They truly are. This is not your father's Democrat Party anymore. And they want to dismantle the very foundations of our republic and everything that we all stand for and that Charlie Kirk evangelized. Everything, as has been said here, everything is on the line in the midterms of 2026, and we have much more to do. But if we lose the House majority, the radical left, as you've already heard, is going to impeach President Trump. They're going to create absolute chaos. We cannot let that happen, and I know you won't. I know you won't. I want to leave you with three things. If we refuse to let the left and the mainstream media lie without being challenged, it's our job to challenge it. If we refuse to let outside forces divide us, as Glenn Beck said so well, and if we all will do as Charlie did, and that is fight like happy warriors, advance his principles, and adopt his approach, we will win next year, and we will save the greatest nation in the history of the world. We're going to do it together. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Super Centennial. Let's go win. Thank you.